Anytime you learn new software, it can be really exciting, but it can also be really overwhelming, especially with something like Affinity where you have all these tools, all these panels. Well, I'm going to help you out in this video. So how do you control what tools are showing? How do you control what panels are showing and where they're located? I'm going to show you how to go in and customize the Affinity interface, set up your own presets, set up your own studio, and make sure you can always get back to a workspace that is efficient and really helps you get the most out of Affinity. So I know some of this stuff might sound boring, but trust me, even though this video is slightly longer, these are the things that are going to save you headaches. These are the things that are going to give you back time and save you hours and hours. So make sure you watch this one. And this is part of a learning series. So if you're interested in learning all about Affinity, how to get up to speed quickly, make sure you subscribe to this channel and look for more videos in this learning series about Affinity. So let's get right into it and learn all about the Affinity user interface. Once you open a project in Affinity, you're going to see a user interface that looks something like this. Now, what you're seeing may look slightly differently depending on whether you've opened a blank project, or maybe you're looking at a picture like this item here, or maybe you're looking at something like this where you have a vector design, or maybe you have a page layout design like this. And so then you're going to see some different things on screen. So what you're seeing on screen may vary slightly depending on what sort of document you have open, and that can be a little overwhelming or a lot overwhelming, especially if you're a new Affinity user. But there's some simple things I'm going to teach you that are going to help keep you from getting confused, that are going to help it so you can always find your way around, so that it's going to help you so you can always find the tools you want. Because Affinity is great. It's great that we have all of these tools, but if we don't understand how the interface is set up, if we don't know how to get to different panels, if we don't know how to get to different studios, if we don't know how to get to the different tools, then yes, it's going to be overwhelming. So I'm going to give you all the basic knowledge, tips, and tricks that you need to navigate around Affinity with confidence. So let's just start with some basics. By default, you're going to see a toolbar here on the left. Up top, you have file menus and other menus where you can left click and you can go into a menu, you can go into a sub menu. So all sorts of different commands up there through the menus. Then as you look around, you're going to see any open documents have their own tab up here. So here's a tab for this document here. Here's another design here. And so you can click on any of those tabs to navigate to that current open document. Then as you look around here, you're going to see all sorts of different panels. So I have color panel here, down here, here's my layers panel. If I wanted to see this appearance panel, I could click on that. And so as you click on different panels, you'll see it change as it opens that particular panel. But what you need to realize is that the panels you're seeing are where they're located, what other panels they might be grouped with, the tool set that you hear on the left, that can all change. There's so many tools here in Affinity that it would be very cluttered if you tried to put every panel that exists and every tool that exists on the screen at one time. So what you can do is set up custom interfaces that show particular tools for a particular task. And by default, Affinity sort of calls a custom interface a studio. And by default, now that they've combined Affinity Publisher, Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer into one program, they have studios for different tasks. And so Vector Studio, this is where by default you'd usually start if you were working with vector graphics like this. Now maybe if I was over working on a photo here, so let me click over on this tab right here. This is a photo, it's a raster image, it's pixel based, so I might be more likely to use those pixel based tools. So if I click up here, then this is my Pixel Studio, and you notice how all these tools change. If I go on Vector, we have different tools here. If I click on Pixel, we have different tools here. Now if I was working on something like a layout, like this particular document right here, then you notice this is over on Layout tab. So you can click through these different studios to open different tool sets, and as you click on those, you're going to see the panels on screen and the tools in this left menu change. So you have to understand that it's not always going to look the same, but you'll start to learn what tools exist under which studios, where the panels exist under which studios, and also how to set up your own custom interface so you can have exactly the setup that you want. So if you did want to create your own studio, you could click on these three dots to the right of all your studio listings right here. And then once you've clicked on that, you could use this Create Studio button. Now we're going to wait and do that a little later in this lesson after I've showed you some other things. But as long as we're in here, let's just go see how you can turn some of these off. So maybe I don't want the typography studio or compositing or retouching. So if there are any tasks in here where you don't think you're going to do those tasks regularly, you can turn it off. You can always turn that back on later, and then click anywhere out of that and you're out of that. But now we see how we clean this up a little bit up here. Now we have a Vector Studio, Pixel, and Layout. And again, these are just different sort of presets, interfaces that you can switch to find different tools and to find panels in different positions. Okay, so we're going to come back to this idea of studios, and I'm going to show you how to set up your own studios and what to watch out for. But before we do that, let's just go over a couple other things that are going to be important to know when working with tools and with working with panels here in Affinity. So let's start with some toolbar tricks that are important to know. Now these toolbar tricks and panel tricks I'm going to show you, I'm currently working under the Pixel Studio, and so I have my Pixel-based tools over here. But these tricks that I'm going to show you are going to work regardless of which studio you're under here. So by default, you go over here and you click on a tool, and so I have my Move tool selected now, and you'll notice that when I do, I have this sort of contextual bar up here that is specific to this tool. So if you work in other programs, you might be familiar with this. If you're coming from Canva, if you have a photo selected, then you're going to have a contextual tool that shows you things about a photo. If you have text, then that contextual toolbar changes with things you can change about text. Well, it's the same way in here. As you click through different tools, you're going to notice how this area up here, this contextual toolbar, is going to change based on the tool you have selected. Now, I come down here and I click through and we watch this change. You'll also notice with some of these here, you actually have more than one tool nested together. So if I click on this one right here, it's the erase brush tool if I just hover over it. However, if I use this little triangle at the bottom and click that, I can see it's actually the erase brush, the background erase brush, and the flood erase tool. So just as you can have different panels grouped together, you can also have different tool sets, different tools grouped together under one icon. Now, I actually have a little hint on screen here, which I'm going to go ahead and hide, pretend like you didn't see this. So I'm going to get rid of this subtools option because by default, that won't always be turned on. And so if you're going through here and you're struggling to find this triangle, and I can see what the paintbrush tool does, but then I can't see what the paint mixer brush does. Well, here's something that I love to do. I think it makes it less cumbersome getting from tool to tool when you have tools grouped like that. And that is anywhere in here over any of these tools, just right click to bring up this menu and go turn on this subtools option. When you do, it's essentially going to make all those tools pop out. You can grab it by this little handle here. You can move it anywhere around. I like to put it right here close to the tools, but just out to the right. And now notice as I click on any tool here, if there are subtools, they're all going to instantly show over here to the right. And then as I hover over them, then I'm going to get that little tool hint that tells me what the tool's name is and tells me all about the tool just by hovering over it. If I ever want to hide this, just right click subtools, okay? But this right click subtools trick is very helpful because I hate these little twiddly fly out panels. Like I can barely even see this. So I like to turn on that subtool option so I can just click on the one tool then, and I'm going to see the entire tool set here to the right for any tools that are nested under that one icon. So that subtools option, that's really my first big tip when it comes to working with the toolbar over here in Affinity. Now, as you use Affinity more and more, you'll get familiar with some of these tools, but you'll be like, hey, that's a little difficult to get to, or that tool I never use at all. Or maybe you're working in Pixel Studio, but you know there's some vector tools that you don't have here that you'd like to be able to get to without jumping over to that Vector Studio. Well, the good news is that this toolbar is completely customizable. You can set it up any way you want. So what you're going to do is you're going to come down below your toolbar and you're going to find these three dots and you'll notice it says Customize Tools. Well, if I just click on that, then suddenly I bring up this menu over here and suddenly I can see a list of all tools within Affinity. So if I scroll down here, we can see that there's an awful lot of tools. Now, if you want to sort of limit that and see just some of these tools at a time, you can pick a particular category. Maybe I just want to see all my text tools. Maybe I just want to see my vector tools. Maybe I want to see my export tools. So you can go and you can limit this, or you can just have it showing all tools. Now, as you're looking at this, any tool that's grayed out means it already exists somewhere over here in your toolbar. If it's not grayed out, then it's a tool you don't currently have in your toolbar. So let's just say you decide, hey, I want to add this artboard tool over to my toolbar, or you're just going to click and hold on this and you're going to drag it all the way over, place it right here. Now suddenly you have the artboard tool in your toolbar. And hey, if you want to move it around, since you're under customize, you can just grab it and you can move it up, and maybe we'll put it all the way up near the top up here. Now, if I go out of customize for a second, so let me close out of it, and then I want to move that artboard tool now I can't move it. To be able to drag tools around here and rechange their order, you do have to be in under customize, and then once you have that, again, you can position it anywhere you want it here. So you can just find new tools over here and then drag them over to your toolbar. You can even put them under a set. So if I try to put it right on this text tool, we notice, it doesn't work, so I'm gonna have to release it here. Well, what if I just click on that? And what if I open that up? Now remember, we have this little subtools thing, so hey, maybe now I can take this contour and I can put it right up in there. Yeah, that works. So you can add things directly to the menu here, but then if you have this little subtools option open, it makes it very easy to drag a tool to a different set. So let's just put that contour back on its own over here. But let's say, hey, I know the selection tools up here. I don't use these that much, but I use this lasso tool all the time. So maybe I'm just going to take this lasso tool, take it right out of it, put it right up here in its own spot in the menu here. Okay? And so as long as you're under this customize, it's very easy to drag new tools over here, reposition them anywhere you want in your menu. And if you have that little subtools trick working, then also very easy to nest tools under other tool sets. Now, just like we're adding tools, you can also get rid of tools. This hand tool, for example, I know there's a keyboard shortcut, the spacebar, where you can very easily bring that up whenever you want. I don't need it over here, so maybe I'll just take that one and I'll get rid of it. So the same way you can add tools by dragging them over, you can also get rid of tools by just clicking, dragging, and then dragging them over here, and they'll disappear. Okay, so keep in mind here, no matter what tools you have here, no matter what workspace you're in, you can always make updates and changes based on what works best for you and what tools you find you need. Now, before we move on to talk about a few other things, hey, look, if you use this columns option here, you can change how many columns you have your tool sets in here. So 2 columns, 3 columns, whatever you want, you can make the changes here. And then if we close this and we come back over here, we can right click up on this and hey, look at this. There's another way to access that customize menu right there. And again, coming over here, right clicking again, hey, what's this dock option? Well, if you click that, you can undock this tool panel, and now you can actually move and stick this anywhere you want. Now, it's not going to snap and nest to these other tools, but maybe you want it to sit over here on the left side, so go ahead and put it there. Again, you really do have a ton of flexibility when it comes to setting up this workspace however you want. Now, I'm actually going to click this again to open up this customize option again, because we were talking about these tools here, but what about toolbar? What about panels? Well, let's look at these other options as well. If we click on this toolbar option, you're going to see all these options here. Now, these do take a little bit of time to figure out what each of these does, but what this does here is this controls this top toolbar here. So you see this space here, we can actually stick stuff on either sides of this. So I can have things up here, I can have things down here. So let me navigate and find a couple of these to add up here, and I'll just show you how you can customize up here and make even more tools easily within reach. So let me just scroll down here through here, and I'm going to find a few of these here. So let's scroll down, and I think I'll grab this merge curves option. I'll put it up here. So go ahead and release that. Now I didn't see it go up there. I don't think I quite got it into the right space. Let me try that again. So you got to drag it up here and put it right there. There we go. There's merge curves, invert selection. I'll put that one over on this other side. So you can put it on either side. And then let me see one more. Let's find one more in here. Let's find this transform option here. So I'll grab this and I'll put that up here on this side. So we have invert selection, merge curves, and transforms. Let's look at how we have now these easy buttons for accessing more functionality here using these newly added buttons here on this top menu. So I'll go ahead and close out of this. Let me start by making a simple selection here. So I'm just going to take my selection tool here, just draw a freehand selection. Now, a lot of times when I'm doing editing work, I might select one area, but then I want to select the opposite, the inverse of that selection. So now I can do that very quickly since it's something I know I do a lot. We can see how now it switches to everything outside of the central area. I use that invert selection and it switches back to just this center area. So I'll hit Control D to deselect, but if that's something you do a lot, you might want to add that easy button up here so you can do that very quickly. Now let me also come in here now, and I'm just going to add a couple of rectangles on screen, and I have this a gradient fill applied to them, so I'll put that one here, and then I'll put another one here. So now I have some more options up here. If I want to transform this, this lets me flip the shape horizontally. I can flip this shape vertically. And then also if I just want to rotate it, I can rotate it that direction. I can rotate it back the other way. So again, some very easy transform options up here. Now my other options is merge curves up here. So if you ever have vector shapes and you want to merge multiple vector shapes together, you can use this merge curves options. I say vector shapes, they get called curves a lot in Canva, but if they're shapes, they may just have their shape name like this says rectangle. But if I select both of these here by clicking and then shift clicking and selecting the other layer here, I have them both selected. I also could have selected them both using this move tool and just by, making sure I click on one and then shift clicking on the other, have them both selected now. Now if I choose this merge curves, we'll notice that they collapse down to one layer here. So now I have those as one vector shape now. And now of course, if I use the transform, I am now rotating all of them together as one. So again, just these toolbar options here that we found under toolbar here, tools for the toolbar here, but then tools toolbar. See how it gets confusing with tools and tools toolbar. This is the tools panel, I guess, and then the toolbar is this top space up here. And either way, you can customize these any way you want, just to make those tasks that you do on a regular basis easier. Okay, let's come back to the customize panel one last time, and then let's look at the panels option. So this is very simple. Here under the panels, you can turn panels off and on. So if I were to come in here and start turning my brushes off and on, that brush panel would start to disappear and reappear. So if you're not sure where a panel is, just keep an eye out for something disappearing and reappearing. So we see here are our brushes over here. If I come in here and turn that off and on, that's going to show and hide that panel. So again, very easy to customize your workspace and make sure you have the tools and panels open that are going to make the most sense for you. Now let's look at some other things you can do with panels here. So first of all, you have panels nested together, but let's say I wanted to take this color panel and I wanted to move it down here by this history panel. Well, I could just click, hold on that and then drag it. I can pull it right down and I can, boom, put it right down here in this space. Now, if you ever want to collapse a whole set of panels, let me move that color back up to top. But let's say I wanted to sort of collapse color and histogram. Well, if I double click on one of these names, you'll notice how it sort of shrinks down and then all the other panels move to fill up space. So again, if I wanted to collapse all these panels here, just double click on any one of these names here. So if I double click on layers, you notice how sort of the whole thing twirls closed. So let's double click again on layers. Now everything twirls closed. If I want to twirl everything back open, double click and everything opens back up. So again, double click, double click. I'm triple clicking sometimes here, but if you double click, you can twirl something open or close. So the other thing you can do with panels is we've seen how you can nest them anywhere you want. You can also take one, you can pull it out. Maybe I want to dock it somewhere else. Maybe I want a whole another row here. So let me take this whole panel here and I'm sort of going to move it until I see it snap and turn blue. So if you find right the edge of this other row of tool panels, then boom, I'm going to snap into place. Now, if I did that, I might want to bring my tools back over here. Maybe I want to redock those, so I'll redock those back over here. But again, I can take and I can bring out more rows of tools here. So I have layers here, but maybe I wanted to see my history. I could bring that up again, wait until I see it turn blue, and boom. So you can build out your workspace any way you want. You can shrink panels. You can nest them with other different panels, so you can group them together however you want. You can sort of have them free floating just by pulling them out and letting them hang out wherever you want. You can dock them different places, so I can dock them on the left side, I can dock them on the right side. So you have all these different options. Now, as we do this, and as we customize tools and as we customize panels, this is when we might want to think about developing our own default workspace where we have the settings and tools we liked. And that's where we're going to double back now to what we first talked about, and that was these studios here. Because we can switch between these two studios, and all these changes I've been making these changes under this Pixel Studio. Well, what if I just wanted to leave that original Pixel Studio untouched? What if I want to develop a different studio for maybe some different tasks I want to perform? So you may find that you want to create your own studios for specific tasks or just for your default workspace and have them be different from these studios that already exist within Affinity here. Now, before I show you how to create a studio, there is one important distinction to be made between a studio and a preset, because if you move all your panels around and you're just concerned about panels, you're not concerned about this toolbar, you're just concerned about your panel positioning, then you can come up here under Window, you can go under Panels, and you can choose Add Preset. So I'm going to call this one New Panel Positioning. You might call it something better than this, but I'm just going to give it this name now, because now I can go ahead and do that, and then I could come up here and I could make some changes. I could grab this history panel. Let's pull it out. We know we can close stuff via that customize interface, but you can also just use the X here to close that out. Let's say layers. I'm going to pull the layers out and put it over here. So I've made these changes, but if I'm like, I want to get back to that workspace that I had, that panel setup that I had, well, we can just come up here under Window, we can come under Panels, and then we'll see under here, under Panels, we see that new positioning panel that we set up before, and if I click on that, boom, everything in terms of panels gets restored the way you want. Now, something important to know is this panel preset only exists under this Pixel Studio because that's where I created it. If I come under Vector, a different studio, and I go under Window, Panels, we don't have that preset here. So presets are unique to the studio under which you created them, and presets do affect panel positioning, whether they're open, where they're located, but it does not affect these toolbars, okay? If you want to affect everything, that's where we have to move beyond these presets, and now we're going to create a new studio. Now, there are a few crucial things to understand when we get into talking about studios. So we've made all these changes to the Pixel Studio, and if I switch over here to layout and then I come back to Pixel, it looks like it has all these changes, all these new positions. However, if you right click on any studio name up here in this menu, you'll see options like Edit, Revert, Update, and then for this one we even have Reset to Pixel Master. So watch what happens if I click Revert Pixel. Then suddenly it goes back and gets rid of all those panel changes. It gets rid of some of the toolbar additions we may have made. It's keeping this 3-column layout, but a lot of the things just went away. So when you revert, it's taking it back to whatever snapshot your system settings has. And so even though you make some of these panel adjustments, if you don't know how to save them, you could lose them. Now, let's do something again. Let's take this histogram. Let's say I do want it over here, so let's put it in. Let's just go ahead and let it snap on this side. And so once I've made that change, what if I went up now and I went under this pixel and I right-clicked and I choose Update Pixel? What have I done then? In essence, what you've done is you've taken a new snapshot of all your current settings and you've saved that to sort of your system settings behind the scene. So even if you close out Affinity, start a whole new Affinity session, you're not going to lose that. So watch what happens now if I come up under right click and I choose Revert Pixel. Well, it's reverting to this because this is the last snapshot I took. Now, that's where there is still this Reset to Pixel Master, and if I do that, that sort of tells me I'm going to reset Studio Pixel. Are you sure you want to reset back to the factory settings? So this sets it back to the factory settings. So if I click yes, then we're going to give it a second. And did it happen? No, it actually did not happen. And I've actually studied this, and I think this is a bug that currently exists within Affinity because it does not revert to your factory settings. It's just reverting back to the last updated state within the Pixel Studio. And that's going to make this workflow that I teach you now all the more important if you want to preserve these default workspaces and then have your own workspace and then have a baseline you can always return to. So let's get into how we're going to work this problem and how we're going to create our own studios. So if we come in here now and we want to create a new studio, I can come in here and I can come under the menu here and choose Create Studio, and I'll call this Greg Studio A. So you can name it something that makes sense to you. You have different versions, you can give them different names. It could be A, B, but you might want to give it something more descriptive. I'm just going to do this for example. Now when you do this, you can choose whatever little icon and color you want for that. Give it a description. All that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and create. And now I have this new studio. Oh, something I forgot to show you when I was doing that. So let me go back and do create a studio. Also right here, clone from. This clone from option is crucial because you're telling it basically what studio you want to start as your clone when you're making that new studio. I think it had set the pixel before, I'm not sure, but essentially that gives you the workspace. So for example, if let's do another one real quick, let's call this Greg Studio B. Studio B. And this one I'm going to make a clone of this layout one. And I'll give it a different color. And we'll go ahead and create that. So now with this new one, you'll notice how this one here is just a clone of this layout here, right? So you're just cloning a starting point, but then you're going to go in here and make updates. So here's my Studio A, here's my Studio B. So I can set these up in different ways. However, as you start to make changes to these, I've noticed that a lot of those updates that you make, they may persist, or you might accidentally hit that update button later and be like, ooh, I really want to get back to the older version. This is why I think it's kind of good to have a studio that is your baseline. So let me come in here and let's edit Greg Studio A. Let's actually call this Greg Studio Baseline. So this would be a default version where I'm not going to save any updates. I'm not going to make any changes. I'm just going to make this sort of my default baseline. So I'm going to go ahead and create this. Go ahead and update that. That's fine. And then let me just throw out this studio here, the Studio B I don't actually want, so I'll just come in here, and if I go under Studios, actually I can select the studio. So here's this baseline studio here. In here I can right click and I can delete that. So we're throwing out Studio B. Do you want to, no, I don't want to throw out baselines. I accidentally almost did the wrong one. So luckily it double checks by asking me. I want to come in here and right click over Studio B, and let's delete Studio B. Sure I'm going to delete? Yes. Now I'm going to take my baseline studio. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a clone of that. So Greg, let's call this Greg Photo Editing. Whatever I want, whatever workspace I'm going to create, give it a name that makes sense. I'm starting with a clone from my baseline studio. I'm going to go ahead and create. But so then once I'm in here and I have this baseline and I have my photo editing, so now with this photo editing one, I might come in here and I might start to make some changes. So let's do this edit tool here. Let's do this corner tool. Maybe I'm going to change some panels. So let's turn on some different panels. Let's turn on this assets panel. Anything else I want to make, right? And so now if I come in here later and these changes are persisting and I don't want them to persist, or maybe I've come in here and they're definitely going to persist because I've choose this update photo editing, I still know that I have that baseline restore point because I have this baseline studio. So if I want to spawn new studios based on this tool set, I can do that. So I like to have these studios that are sort of restore points where I can clone a new studio. So usually with these, I'm not actively working in this studio. I'm just using it as a way to save a basic screen setup. And then for my actual working studio, I'm going to create a clone of that, give it a name. That way I know even though I'm making changes now, if I ever want to revert back, I can do that because I have this other studio. Okay, so this is how I suggest you set up and use studios. Set them up however you want. And then of course, remember, if you want different panel layouts within a given studio or whatever, you also can come in here, window panels, and use these preset options to create different presets for how you have your panel set up. Okay, so panel presets, studios, all the ways to customize different tools, all the ways to customize your looks in here. You're really setting up the workspace that you want within Affinity so you can work at your most efficient. Okay, so I hope all these tips are helpful. If they are, feel free to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, you can drop them down below. And look out for the next tutorial coming up in this series, which I hopefully will post soon. And if I did already, it'll be linked up here, coming up next, or in the comments down below.
Everything I do, so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move, so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past.